Hi, I'm Ashley from Sunny Made, and today on Tip Week, we are going to talk about squaring up fabric. Hello, friends. Welcome back. I'm glad you're here. What have you been up to lately? I would love to see what you are working on. You can find me over on Instagram at Ashley_SunnyMade. Tag me in your posts. Let me see the quilts you are working on. Let me know how things are going. Today, it's Tip Week. We are going to talk about squaring up fabric. This is one of the first steps that we do when we start a quilt, and so I thought it would be a great place to start. Let's first talk about fabric. I have some fabrics here that I just purchased. I need to actually get them cut for a new block series, and I thought this is the perfect time to talk about fabric and getting it ready to cut. Okay, first, I know sometimes the question is, do we wash our fabric ahead of time? I do not wash my quilt fabric before I cut it. I don't really have a good reason. I do always wash it if I'm making a garment, because I do sometimes sew clothes and I want it to be pre-shrunk. But when I'm working with fabric for a quilt, I do not pre-wash it. So the first thing that I actually want to do, especially if it's yardage and I've just got it cut from the quilt store, I'm going to take this to my iron and I'm going to iron it nice and flat. We want to iron it because if we don't and we go to cut it, sometimes you get some wonky blocks, pieces that we've cut. Sometimes it is folded under and it cuts really weird. And really we want it to lay flat when we're cutting it. So this one was on the yard or on the bolt, and my local quilt store likes to fold over that first, so it causes a point. And this actually has that diagonal line on it. It has the fold line from it sitting in a pile. I mean, I only have had it for about a week, but there's already fold lines from when they folded it. So what I first want to do is take my fabric, take it over to the iron, and give it a nice, good pressing. I think it depends on how you want to do it. I always press with steam, but I have friends that are like, do not put water in my iron. And so they actually have a spray bottle, and then you can spray your fabric and iron it. That way it gives it kind of the same feel. It still gives it a little steam, but you're not putting water in your iron. So that just is a personal preference. You can decide how you want to do it. I did a pre-cut video a couple weeks ago, and I go into detail on how to prep your pre-cuts and how to get them ready for cutting and to get them ready for sewing. And if it's a fat quarter bundle or a fat eighth bundle, just like yardage, I recommend that you make sure and iron them. And really the truth is when you have a fat quarter bundle, it could have been sitting as a bundle and all folded up for a really long time. So sometimes some of those creases in your fabric have been there for a while. So all I'm doing is I'm hitting this with my iron. It's going to iron out, smooth out all of those fold seams, and then I'm just going to take them over to the cutting mat and get them ready to cut. Okay, now that we have it ironed, I'm bringing my fabric over to my cutting mat. If you're wondering, this fabric is called Sweet Freedom by Beverly McCullough. We just got it in our local quilt store. I think it's super cute. Some of it actually has some gold outlines in it, so it's kind of fun. Okay, let me zoom out so you can see my whole cutting mat. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so we have this yardage here and we want to cut it. As a whole, our edges should be cut straight, but honestly, this is fabric and it stretches different directions, so it's not always cut straight. So what I first want to do is line up my bottom edge here along a line, and this is actually the fold, and the reason I like to use the fold is because it gives me a nice straight edge. Sometimes our salvage edge is not always folded straight, and so I will start with a folded edge and I will put it down along a line on my cutting mat. I am then going to look to see how straight my line is. So if you'll see here, I kind of have the edge right at this 24. If I go up my cutting mat as a whole, it's very straight, but it's not perfect. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler and also line up that folded edge on a line on my ruler. And there we can see they actually did a pretty good job. It's almost straight all the way up. But when they cut my fabric at the quilting store, they always give me an extra quarter to half an inch just so that I have enough to square up my fabric when I get home. And at this point then I am just going to trim off that 1/16 of an inch until it is absolutely straight. Now ideally I wouldn't move my fabric before I start cutting again, but I am a right-handed cutter. I just cut this side and I actually need to flip it around so I can cut it. And then at this point, this is where I start to cut my fabric for my quilt block. Whatever I need to do, I first cut it in strips and then I cut those strips into smaller pieces. So let's look at another piece of fabric. Here's my stars that I was holding on to. This is, again, same fabric line. It's Sweet Freedom. Super cute. I like the stars. They have a cream background one that has stars on it, and it has like red, white, and blue, and I think gold on it too, and it's super cute. Okay, so this one already, if you can look up here, you can see, I think this might have been the end of a bolt, or the beginning of a bolt, I guess, and you can see that it doesn't quite match up. Those edges don't match up. So we definitely want to start by squaring this up. I'm going to just put it on the line. And honestly, this line is not as important as lining up your fabric with the edge of your ruler. And I don't want to cut too much off, so I slide it over until all I'm cutting off is just a tad of that fabric. If you look, this is all I cut off of that last piece. So that's really what I want to do. I don't want to waste my fabric. I just want to square it up until, and see, I moved it too far. I want to square it up so that it is all ready for me to cut it and it's ready to go. So I'm just going to line it up here, get it fairly straight along here, and then I just run my rotary cutter over it, and it makes that nice straight edge. It gets all that fuzzy off. If you notice, there was lots of fraying on that edge. That's why I think it was one that was the end of a bolt. And so I now have two pieces of fabric that are ready to be cut. Now that you have squared up your fabric, it is now time for you to cut it. Make sure you are very careful and you check your pattern a couple times before you actually cut so you know exactly what you're cutting. you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next week. Happy sewing!